Welcome to this explainer. We love taking dense management research and transforming it into clear, visual, actionable insights. And today, we are tackling literally the ultimate puzzle of workplace psychology: human motivation. If you've ever managed a team, or frankly, even just worked in one, you know that keeping people driven is a massive challenge. But it's not a mystery, right? It's a science. So today, we're going to build what we call a motivation matrix using 5 foundational theories of human behavior at work.
So why do some teams absolutely thrive while others just kind of survive? Have you ever noticed that? You can have 2 employees with the exact same job description sitting in the same office, but with completely different energy levels. One is constantly pushing the envelope, and the other is literally just watching the clock tick down. We are going to solve that exact problem today by exploring 5 pivotal motivation theories that actually explain the mechanics of human drive.
Okay, let's dive into this. Motivation isn't just some vague, fluffy feeling of being excited to go to work. It's actually made up of psychological forces from within that dictate 3 very specific things: intensity, direction, and persistence. Intensity is how hard you try. Direction is where you're actually focusing that effort, and persistence is how long you can keep it up. But here is the absolute crucial takeaway. Motivation is not a fixed personality trait, it is a psychological state. And because it's not permanently set in stone, it's a variable that managers can actively influence and shape.
But before we get into the theories, we really have to clear up a massive misconception. Just having high motivation does not automatically equal high performance. It's actually a formula. Performance equals motivation multiplied by ability. Think about a guy named Michael. Michael is highly motivated, he's eager, he's totally ready to work. But his manager asks him to fix a broken machine, and Michael literally has no idea how to even disassemble it. His performance is going to be low because his ability is 0. Now contrast that with Tony. Tony has that exact same high motivation, but he also possesses the acquired skill to actually fix the machine. High motivation times high ability, that equals top performance. You really cannot manage one without the other.
So here is our roadmap for building this motivation matrix today. First, we'll look through the manager's lens. Second, fulfilling human needs. Third, the 2-factor theory. Fourth, the mental math of expectation. And finally, shaping behavior.
All right, part 1, the manager's lens, theory X and theory Y.
And this brilliantly illustrates where motivation actually starts, with the baseline assumptions a manager makes about their own team. Introduced by Douglas McGregor back in 1960, this theory argues that a manager's perception fundamentally dictates how they lead. Look at the stark contrast here. On the left, we have theory X. This is a super pessimistic view. A theory X manager basically believes the average employee inherently dislikes work, dodges responsibility, and therefore has to be micromanaged, coerced, or even threatened to hit organizational goals. On the right, though, is theory Y, the optimistic view. A theory Y manager believes people actually find work as natural as playing or resting. They believe employees are self-directed, they crave responsibility, and they possess untapped creativity. If you manage via theory X, you're building a rigid, authoritarian workplace. But if you manage via theory Y, you build a participative, inspiring environment.
Moving right along to part 2, fulfilling human needs, Maslow's hierarchy.
So shifting from the manager's perspective to the internal drives of the employee, we run into Abraham Maslow's foundational 1943 theory. You've probably seen this before. Maslow proposed that human beings have 5 levels of needs, stacked up like a staircase. At the very bottom are physiological needs. So in the workplace, this means a basic salary to buy food and simple comforts like a coffee break. Once that's met, we step up to security needs, a safe working environment, job stability, health benefits. Next up are social needs, the desire for teamwork, belonging, making friends at the office. Then comes esteem. That's your recognition, a prestigious job title, a real feeling of self-worth. And finally, right at the peak, self-actualization, reaching your absolute full potential through challenging, creative work. The golden rule here: you cannot motivate an employee with a fancy job title if they're terrified about getting laid off tomorrow. A lower order need has to be satisfied before that next step up actually becomes a motivator.
Okay, part 3, the 2-factor theory, Herzberg's motivation hygiene.
Now this theory tackles a question that seriously frustrates managers everywhere. I pay my team a great salary, so why aren't they passionate about their work? The irony is revealed in these 2 completely separate buckets. On the left, we have hygiene factors. This includes salary, job security, and working conditions. Frederick Herzberg actually called these the dissatisfiers. Why? Because if you don't pay someone enough, they will be deeply miserable. But, and here is the kicker, simply increasing their salary doesn't actually create long-term motivation, it just removes their anger. It literally just stops them from being dissatisfied. To get true passion and drive, you need the right column, motivator factors, or the satisfiers. This is achievement, recognition, and responsibility. Hygiene factors just keep the peace. It's the motivator factors that actually ignite the fire.
Which brings us to part 4, the mental math of expectancy, Vroom's process.
So, the crucial point is we've talked about internal needs, but how do employees actually decide to act in the heat of the moment? Well, it comes down to some rapid-fire mental math. Victor Vroom's expectancy theory shows us that an employee subconsciously asks themselves 3 questions before they exert any effort. First up is expectancy. If I put in the effort, will it actually lead to good performance? Second is instrumentality. If I crush it and perform well, will my manager actually give me the reward? And third is valence. Do I actually care about the reward they're offering? Does it satisfy my personal goals? If the answer to literally any of those 3 is a no, motivation instantly plummets to 0.
Let's ground this mental math in reality with Linda. Linda believes that if she puts her head down and works hard, she can complete her project on time. That's expectancy. She also firmly trusts that if she finishes on time, her boss will give her an RM 500 bonus. That's instrumentality. And finally, she really values that RM 500 because she's going to use it to buy her absolute dream handbag. That is valence. Because all 3 of these elements align perfectly, effort leads to performance, performance leads to a reward, and the reward satisfies a personal goal, Linda is going to experience intense, laser-focused motivation.
And finally, part 5, shaping behavior, Skinner's reinforcement theory. Let's move to and see how this builds out the final piece of our matrix. We're stripping away internal psychology here and looking strictly at external consequences. B.F. Skinner argued that behavior is simply a function of its consequences. It's that simple. People repeat behaviors that get rewarded, and they avoid behaviors that get punished. As a manager, you've got 4 distinct levers to pull laid out right here in this matrix. You can use positive or negative reinforcement to increase a desirable behavior, and you can use extinction or punishment to stop an undesirable behavior. To make this hyper-practical, let's look at exactly how these tools apply on the office floor. Positive reinforcement is straightforward. An employee hits a sales target, you hand them a bonus. Naturally, they'll try to hit it again. Negative reinforcement is a bit different. It's avoidance. Think of an employee coming in early specifically to avoid the dreaded negative consequence of a salary deduction for being late. Then we have extinction. Say an employee's work starts declining. You withdraw the praise and high fives you used to give them. Removing that positive reward extinguishes the bad behavior. And finally, punishment. Someone breaks serious company rules, so they receive a suspension. These are your direct mechanical tools for shaping an office environment. So there you have it. We've fully decoded the matrix. We've seen that motivation requires ability. We've climbed Maslow's hierarchy, separated basic hygiene from true motivators, calculated the mental math of expectancy, and mapped out the consequences of behavior. Now I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Tomorrow morning, take a good hard look at your own workspace. Look at the rules, the rewards, the whole environment. Based on everything we've just unpacked, are you managing your team assuming they are a Theory X problem to be controlled, or are you truly building a system to unleash their Theory Y potential? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.